Portugal holds in-person voting today for its general election, with another minority government expected to be the outcome.
Senior Tories join opposition leader Keir Starmer's calls to see Sue Gray's report in full amid fears it won't be complete. Protests against COVID-19 restrictions take place in Vienna as authorities announce a gradual ease of measures from early February.
Portugal geared up for a snap election this Sunday. The Iberian country has taken many steps to make sure everyone gets the chance to vote. This week, those who tested positive for the virus were given the chance to vote from home before the official election day. Current President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa was among those who voted in person and hammered home the importance of making one's vote count.
Vote because it is a proof of life, of vitality, of democracy, and proof that they want to express their voice, and they should do it, and they have a lot of choices. One of the riches of our system is that it offers so many alternatives, so they should take advantage of them.
The snap election is expected to produce another minority government. Opinion polls suggest the centre-left Socialist and their main rivals, the centre-right Social Democratic Party, remain in a tight race. The Chega party on the right is also on course to become Portugal's third biggest party in government. A late surge by the opposition centre-right party, the PSD, has taken away the ruling Socialist Party's once comfortable lead in the polls. The snap election was called after the PSD's 2022 draft budget was rejected in October. At midday, the turnout stood at 23.3%, which according to sources is much higher than in previous years. Ballots close at 8 p.m. local time on Sunday, with exit polls expected shortly after.
Pressure on the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson over alleged lockdown parties at Downing Street is rising. Some senior Tory MPs have now joined the opposition leader Keir Starmer's call for full information from the civil servant Sue Gray's investigation into the events.
What I want to see is Sue Gray's report in full and the investigation finished as quickly as possible, because we're in this situation where the whole of government is paralysed because the police are now looking at what the Prime Minister was getting up to in Downing Street.
After the police decided to investigate the scandal dubbed Partygate, they asked Sue Gray to make minimal reference to events they are looking at in her report. And for some, this is casting doubts over how complete the report will be. Some MPs are concerned that the police's investigation will water down the report itself and delay it, but the police have defended their position and insist that this is not the case. Downing Street has said it will publish the report as soon as it is received. Protests were held across Vienna on Saturday against COVID-19 restrictions. Police there reported up to 10,000 participants, and some had to be dispersed using pepper spray. Fines were also given for resisting authorities, not wearing masks, and violating COVID-19 restrictions on gatherings. On Saturday, the Austrian government also announced that restrictions will begin to ease. From February the 5th, shops and restaurants will be allowed to open until midnight. From the 12th, proof of vaccination or recovery will no longer be required to enter shops. And a week later, anyone not vaccinated will be allowed to enter restaurants as long as they have a negative coronavirus test. And in Russia on Saturday, over 100,000 new COVID-19 cases were reported, one of the highest numbers since the pandemic started. Authorities are trying to increase the vaccination rates of children aged 12 to 17. 50% of hospitalized children are between 0 and 4 years old. These are children who are sick, with a high temperature, but luckily this temperature stops within 2 or 3 days. They are practically free of pneumonia. The highly spreadable Omicron variant accounts for the majority of new cases in Russia. Hundreds of people protested on the streets of Pristina on Saturday. They are opposed to the government's plans to increase the price of energy. They headed towards the Parliament building, where scuffles broke out with police as they were stopped from entering. Light bulbs were thrown against windows. The Kosovan government has said it is unable to keep energy supplies at the current price. The Canadian singer Joni Mitchell is following in Neil Young's footsteps and removing her music from Spotify in protest against Joe Rogan's controversial podcast that spreads false information about the pandemic. Some 300 scientists have alerted Spotify to the dissemination of messages that damage trust in medical research and health recommendations.
The border town of Avdiivka in the country's east, where the Ukrainian army's been fighting with Russian-backed separatists, has been living in the shadows of the prolonged war for nearly 8 years. But recently, fears have mounted that Russia, which amassed over 100,000 soldiers on its side of the border, may launch an attack. There is a constant tension at the front line, he says. We do not feel any additional threats now since we're constantly under the threat here. We're always in full combat readiness and can fight back any enemy attack if they move in our direction. 25-year-old senior lieutenant Serhiy, who's been at the front line with the Airborne Brigade since 2018, does not believe Russia will dare to start a full-scale invasion. After almost 8 years of fighting, Ukraine has greatly improved its military capabilities along the 280-kilometre front line.
We are ready for any development. The Ukrainian army has been at war with the Russian aggressor since 2014. We are trained, we know the enemy's tactics, we have a very high motivation, we are on our land. The Ukrainian people are with us. We know that our families are waiting for us at home and that we protect ordinary Ukrainians who need peaceful life. And we will stand to the end.
Lieutenant Tatiana Zaritska, a spokesperson for the 25th Airborne Brigade, adds that Russian troops will face fierce resistance and heavy losses if they try to make a military move. Moscow denies any plans to invade and says the troop build-up is part of the routine deployment. But the fear of Russian invasion remains real. Our reporter, Kate Batlitskia, outlines the concerns felt at the Ukrainian army's position.
With the Russian army planning an offensive here at the front line in Avdiivka, Ukrainian forces feel that they are ready to meet any enemy at the front line. Kate Baklitskaya from Avdiivka, Ukraine, for Euronews.
When it comes to election pledges, the new Bulgarian administration is wasting no time carrying them out. The new government is seeking to initiate judicial reform. Prime Minister Kirill Petkov said his government focus would be on creating a mechanism for investigating the Prosecutor General.
We will have a magistrate who will temporarily act as a prosecutor, who can investigate the Prosecutor General.
But there is an obstacle.
The ruling party does not have a majority needed to make constitutional changes and cannot replace either the Supreme Judicial Council or the Prosecutor General.
For that reason, the government will need to seek support from the opposition, the former ruling party, GERB. After Petkov met MEPs in Brussels alongside the chief prosecutor, Ivan Geshev, Geshev expressed concern about the way the government intends to implement the reform. Bulgarian law does not provide a mechanism for controlling the Prosecutor General or prosecuting them.
The lack of accountability on the part of the Prosecutor General is a legislative problem. MEPs do not follow the recommendations of the Venice Commission and the Council of Europe. According to a ruling by the Constitutional Court, any prosecutor can be investigated.
Constitutional law expert Natalia Kisalova explained how this judicial reform could be implemented. The magistrate will be randomly determined, and they will be given the status of an investigator against the Prosecutor General. They will gather evidence to support the accusation. Kisalova added that the judicial reform could be implemented more easily through changes to the Judiciary Act. The change would give the Bulgarian Supreme Judicial Council the power to give the elected magistrate the right to investigate the chief prosecutor. However, the question remains as to who would be able to file charges against the Prosecutor General. In my opinion, there should be more options for filing complaints against the Prosecutor General. The goal is to have a working mechanism, not a fictitious one. For now, the Minister of Justice is expected to prepare the final legislative changes in the Judiciary Act, which the MEPs of Bulgaria will then urgently start voting on.